The Asphalt Jungle is the 1950 heist-noir from legendary director John Huston, starring Sterling Hayden. It is one of the best heist films we are going to cover this month on Heists of the Century on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. I am Harry Bailey. I'm joined by my co-host, not guest host, Shane Mulvaney. Shane, how are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Looking forward to kicking off Heist Month now with an absolute certified banger from John Huston. Obviously returning to the podcast after another certified banger, The Maltese Falcon, which is an episode you can go back and watch. It's probably one of our best episodes today, I'd say, actually. But yeah, John Huston, definitely one of my favourite old Hollywood directors. So yeah, we'll get into this, but this is another heavy hitter from him.
Yeah, as I said at the opening, it stars Sterling Hayden, who we all know as General Jack D. Ripper from Doctor Strangelove, not that long ago on the podcast, as well as the podcast debut of Marilyn Monroe. I have no idea how it has taken us over 70 episodes to cover Marilyn Monroe. That is insanity. But yes, she is in this film. Admittedly, probably not as much as I would wanted her to be. She is on the poster and stuff, which is hilarious. But she is very much a minor character in this film. But yes, it is the podcast debut of Marilyn Monroe. It's worth noting it's fairly early on in her career, which is probably why she didn't get as much screen time as she would have, say, had this film been made 5 years later. But that being said, The Asphalt Jungle is a film noir, but it is also a heist film. And it is unbelievable. It is a class film. Shane, spoiler-free review, thoughts on The Asphalt Jungle?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. It's so bleak, it's so dark, it's everything you want from a noir film, but also the heist itself. Maybe it's not like the most ingenious plan, shall we say, even though it's a very good plan. Like the character of Doc is, they say over and over again, he is like a kind of a genius. This is what he does. He specializes in planning these
criminal mastermind.
Yeah, planning these elaborate heists, these elaborate kind of plans that no one else could think of. The actual heist itself goes off fairly without a hitch, almost, up until it doesn't. And then obviously there's because every cinematic heist has to have a moment where things start to unravel, obviously. Sorry.
Yes. And you mentioned it being bleak. I can't help but feel my first thoughts watching this film were, obviously he's a fairly spoken about director at the moment. Zach Cregger, who directed Weapons and Barbarian, is rumored to be directing an unknown henchman film set in the DC universe in Gotham. He's making a film about a henchman. This is like the blueprint for that, I think. A character like Dix would be like such a fascinating henchman to cover, because this film is so desperate, it's so bleak. It shows both sides. It shows there's a really, really important scene after the heist that shows that the cops aren't the bad guys. There are just corrupt cops that exist, but the cops aren't the bad guys. Yet we are following the people who are doing the heist, because we can see that, you know, society is making it pretty hard for a lot of these people. A lot of these people are really scrambling to make any sort of a living. Some of them have kids, and we definitely empathize with those who are actually committing the heist. But it also plays both sides, and I feel like that in itself, as well, the city kind of feels like a character. It doesn't lean into it a lot, but like one of the first scenes in the film is the Commissioner Hardy is basically roasting Lieutenant for how poorly everything's gone in the city recently. Lieutenant Dietrich, who is the corrupt cop, he's basically getting grilled for like crime rates are through the roof. Everyone's having a horrible time. No one's getting caught. So you can see that police frustration as well as that. So it's just a fascinating, deep, bleak, dark, moody film that I feel like if you were to just say that this film was set in Gotham and that these people were henchmen, and if you were to replace the character of Emmerich with like a mobster type Batman villain, like a, or not even a mobster because obviously it's a heist, but like a C tier Batman villain, like someone like Killer Moth or the ventriloquist or something, like someone who isn't doing the blowing up the city crimes, but like heists and stuff is kind of their thing. I think this would be a really interesting film for Zach Cregger to look at and adapt when making that henchman film.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, this came out in the kind of the Hays Code period, so that'll give you a little hint as to how things eventually pan out for the gang of crooks, obviously. But the fact that, like you said, it focuses entirely on this gang of criminals, apart from like a couple of scenes where it kind of glances towards the cops, where it's like it's almost apologizing for the fact that the film alludes to the fact that there are corrupt cops. Like obviously it came out in a time where like, you know, there's people wanted to kind of believe in law and order and justice and stuff.
And with the Hays Code as well, you can't really be shown to be showing the bank robbers winning either. You got to show that the law wins in the end.
That's it.
In most of these kinds of films.
Definitely, and even saying like, right, well, there are corrupt cops, but like they're one in a few. The vast majority are good, decent people who want to come to like obviously you kind of nearly have to put that in because of the time period that it's set in, obviously, and being produced in. But again, it's entirely pretty much follows this gang of crooks, and like I think we talked a few weeks ago about heist films where it's like, sometimes, and maybe next week we'll come on to one where it's like I don't know whose job is. I basically don't know whose job is what. Like
we get to the heist and it's like, hang on, who are half of you?
It's like you're just there.
And we don't see them again
as window dressing. It's like weird. And even there's even a film later on this month that we'll be covering that's much more comical, but yeah, like it's kind of along similar lines, shall we say? But this one, you know, everyone's role. You know what they're there for. You know why they've been picked to do the job. So Dix is like the heavy. Dix is the guy who he's maybe not the brightest guy, even though he actually is kind of brighter than he lets on, but maybe not the brightest guy on the outside, but this is a guy who can throw hands with the best of them. He's been in a fair few scrapes down the years. He's just got out of prison, and yeah, like he has a reputation in this town, so to speak. And then you have a guy, you have a driver, you have a lock picker, so like you have. Everyone is there for a reason. The team is not too big. You're not just putting a lot of guys in there for the sake of it. Everyone has a job. Everyone is there for a reason. And it's like a finely tuned machine, even though it's almost Reservoir Dogs-esque in the sense of the guys don't really know each other that well. They maybe know each other a little bit more than Reservoir Dogs, but like everyone has been picked for a reason. And I definitely think as well, Reservoir Dogs, this had to have been an inspiration to Tarantino in the sense of having a bunch of guys, like I said, who have been picked for a reason and who are really, really good at what they do. So yeah, this is just it's an absolutely class heist from start to finish, class noir from start to finish. This blending of genres, I just can't get enough. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, so I reckon we get into the team anyway. So as you mentioned, we've Sterling Hayden, who is Dix Handley. Proper cinema name that. Yeah. He, as you said, he's the heavy. They kind of allude to he's going to be the least paid. He is the goon. He is the henchman. He is, if a policeman gets involved, send Dix after them. Then we have the driver, as you said, who is Gus, who's played by, of course, James Whitmore, who I'm sure all of you know as Brooks from Shawshank Redemption. That's Brooks from Shawshank Redemption, the old man from Shawshank who gets let out of prison early.
Nice.
Brooks was here. Yeah, shout out to Gus as well. I included this in my Letterboxd review, but it's so true. Because I also have a cat who comes to the back of the restaurant that I work in that I feed. Not my cat or anything, but just thought I'd mention Raffle the cat, because when else am I going to get to mention Raffle? Then we have, as you said, the lockpicker, the doorman, the boxman, as they call him, Louis. Louis is the one who has kids. Well, he has a kid and he has a wife. He obviously, with regards to everyone involved, has the most to lose. He is the family man, but he is also the specialist. He is the one of these three anyway, who's comfortably going to be paid the most. This is his MO. We have Doc, who has just managed to get out of prison. I believe he was like let out of prison, and he was meant to go from point A to point B, and just kind of strolled away from point B. And all the cops are like, "Oh, how did that happen?" And this is part of why Commissioner Hardy's really cracking down on the police. He's like, how is stuff like that happening? How is this guy just walking free? Like, you were just meant to bring him somewhere. How did he end up getting free? And he is played by Sam Jaff, I believe it's pronounced, who won Best Actor at the Venice Film Awards for this film. Doc Erwin Reidenschneider, who is a very interesting character. I feel like we kind of get these sorts of characters a lot in heist films. The pacifist, so to speak. He doesn't carry a gun. He relies on his brains rather than his brawn. 9 times out of 10, he's smarter than the people he's in the room with, and he's 2 or 3 steps ahead. And he's the one who's orchestrated this whole thing. But this whole thing, like all heists, needs financial backing, because if you're going to break in and steal a load of diamonds, you need the right equipment. So Alonzo D. Emmerich, who is in the killer moth role, shall we say, is the financier of this, played by Louis Calhern, who we have seen on the podcast before in Notorious. And yeah, this is one of the main story beats, because the financier of the heist is actually broke.
Yeah. There's also a guy called Cobby, who's a nightclub owner, who is also kind of racketeering and gambling. He's into all that kind of stuff, and certainly has a special relationship with a couple of police officers and police lieutenants. And then essentially he kind of knows he knows Dick, so Dick's kind of owes him money, about $2,300, which they end up getting into a bit of a tiff over. But that's how Doc kind of ends up actually learning about Dick's, because Dick's goes to the nightclub, wants to place a bet, and obviously he owes him money. But I think often Doc's mind, Doc's like, well, that guy looks like he can handle himself. I like how he handled that situation. He didn't just puff his chest out and start swinging hands, but he let it be known, listen, like, you pissed me off right there, and I'll deal with you if I have to. So that definitely impresses Dix, and they have an interesting relationship, or Doc, I should say, and they have an interesting relationship as the film goes on. Almost like a weirdly, almost, I wouldn't say father-son, but almost like uncle-nephew type relationship.
Yeah, there is definitely like a generational thing.
Yeah, where it's like, I think Dix just kind of respects the fact that he's his elder, respects the fact that Doc is so smart and has planned this heist to perfection, and kind of respects the fact that he doesn't just resort to violence at the first port of call as well. Another bit about Dix is that his family have lost their farm, so he grew up on a farm, and basically his whole modus operandi for wanting to kind of take this job on is to get enough money so he can go back and buy the farm, and go back and live on the farm. So that's why he wants to do this. Obviously Cobby just wants money, and then there's also another guy called Bob Branham, who's he's like a kind of a right hand man. He's like a fixer for Emmerich, who he works for Emmerich, or at least does some jobs for Emmerich, and he is put on the case for Emmerich because Emmerich needs him to kind of chase down some debtors who owe him money, because obviously if they gave him that money, then he's going to be able to pull off and pay more money towards this heist then as well. So
yeah, and then Marilyn Monroe essentially plays Emmerich's niece, who, to be honest, her entire reason for existing in this film is to be his alibi for the night of the heist. But yeah, when it comes to the heist, first of all, I'll just say as well, the film opens, like, the opening shots are amazing. John Huston's got a bunch of great shots in here, very noir, very dark, very shadowy, which I love. But the opening sequence where Dietrich is going around in a squad car trying to find someone, Dix, is amazing. There's so many great shots. One where there's like a long corridor outdoors of pillars, and we just see the squad car in the background go around, and Dix goes around behind one of the pillars, It's a gorgeous shot as well. During the heist, there's some really great shots, a load of great close-ups of Louis when he's breaking into the safe. It's a very, very well shot film.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the music, but I'll talk about that later, because the reason that I want to talk about the music is because it is to do with the ending. But anyway, with regards to the build up to the heist, there's a lot of tension and a lot of desperation. Everyone's kind of got what they have on the line, as well as worth saying with Dix. He isn't your typical rough around the edges, like he's not a brute or anything, because there's this woman, Dolly, who is desperate. Again, another thing that really adds to this city feeling like a character and feeling like Gotham in particular is Dolly's desperate because she works in a nightclub that got raided by the police on payday, which is such a like Gotham thing to happen. So she didn't get paid because the police raided the place, because the police are trying to crack down on crime. But as a result, innocent civilians like Dolly are the ones who are actually suffering. Very Gotham. But she ends up sort of staying with Dix until she can get back on her feet. And it's through her that we basically learn about Dix's MO and the farm and everything. And that also that he's just he's not a bad person at all. Because again, although this film, as we said, makes an effort to show that not all police are corrupt and not all police are bad guys, it also it makes a serious effort to show the struggle of those involved in the heist, and that they're not necessarily all cartoonish henchmen. Zach Cregger, I'm sure, will elaborate. But with regards to the build up to the heist, Emmerich is broke. So we learn fairly soon in that Emmerich, with the help of this fixer, as you said, Bob Brannan, the plan is simple. These lads are going to break in, steal the diamonds, and Emmerich is going to then exchange the diamonds for money. He'll be the middleman. He'll give them the cash. Except he doesn't have cash. So his plan is to try and trick them into leaving the diamonds with him, whilst the money comes in the next day or so, which will be a lie, and then he'll disappear to Cuba, I believe, with his wife and his niece and possibly Bob. So we know from the get-go that he's a bit dodgy, and as well, what adds to it is that Doc doesn't trust him.
Yeah, just about Marilyn Monroe. She's his lover, is she not? Like, I think the whole...
I don't know, because it's real weird. She keeps calling him uncle, and I don't know, is that like a...
It could be a weird fetish thing, like, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I tried not to, because he makes comments about the alibi being like, oh, a man of my age is ashamed to admit that I did this, but I was with this woman last night.
I took it as being that they were having an affair. That's what I took it as. That they're not actually related. I certainly hope they aren't anyway.
Yeah, you are probably right, but I just thought it was so weird that she kept calling him.
I could be wrong. But
I actually think you're probably right.
Yeah, I almost hope I am, because, well, I definitely hope I am, because, like, it's quite weird otherwise. Sorry to cut across you there, but Emmerich obviously plans to kind of scoot off with the cash, but then obviously the heist itself, it doesn't last too long. But obviously it's why we all watch heist films. You want to see a great ass heist. So they break in, so they knock the wall down, and they get to work with power drills, almost similar-ish to Rafifi in a way. Obviously Rafifi came.
Yeah, I definitely got Rafifi vibes from the heist. Similar vibes.
Like Rafifi came after this. I'm not saying it was necessarily inspired by this, because it's a much longer heist, and much more creative, I would say, and certainly how it's shot. But definitely, it wouldn't shock me if it was if it was inspired. So they use power drills on the safe, and they finally get it open. But then, because they've knocked into a certain kind of power source, there's alarms going off all throughout the street, on all the stores, all throughout the street. So they have to kind of hurry the hell up. The Gus is outside waiting in the car, and then finally there's a night watchman. So just as they're about to leave, finally, heist, everything has gone pretty much perfect. They're about to get out. There's a night watchman who's just about to come in, who's obviously heard some commotion inside, and he barges in, and Dix attacks the man who has a gun, but because the gun goes off, it actually hits Louis, who's obviously the who's broken into the safe, and obviously Louis gets shot, and he's in a pretty bad way, so they split up. Dix and Doc get into one car. Gus picks up Louis in the other car, and yeah, hasn't quite gone off without a snag after all.
Yeah, and then we get the double cross scene, or at least what is meant to be the double cross scene, because Emmerich and Bob try and do their plan, which is Bob's basically just sat there with a concealed weapon, and Emmerich is like, oh, I have the money, but just not on me. It'll be here in like 2 days, blah, 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 blah. But as we know, Doc doesn't trust him, and Doc is basically inquiring about this whole thing. He basically says, I don't know, this is a bit dodgy. You gave us your word. And Emmerich like, oh, well, we moved quite hastily. And Doc's like, no, actually, the plan went exactly according to plan. There was nothing hasty about it. So then, in an incredibly energetic shot, this is all in one shot, Bob pulls out a gun, goes to shoot them, but at the same time, Dix pulls out a gun. He shoots Bob. He catches one in the hip, and he falls against the door. It's all caught in one shot. It's so energetic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Bob's done for. But Doc basically spares Emmerich's life because they still don't really know a guy who can swap the diamonds for cash. So they're going to use Emmerich while he's still alive to do that, because Emmerich, even though he's broke, he does have connections still. That being said, Dix very much did get a bullet to the side, which he tries to play off, didn't hurt, but you can see he's bleeding through his shirt. And the lads leave anyway to try and basically take cover for the night, whilst Emmerich tries to cross the T's and dot the I's with regards to swapping the diamonds for money. And in the meantime, poor Louis, they try and get a doctor for him, but to fast forward a bit, he meets his demise, because when the cops kind of catch word of everything that's happening and they cop onto everything, basically Emmerich dumps Bob's body in the river, and it gets found the next day. So the cops are sniffing around, and this is where Marilyn Monroe's character comes in. She was his alibi. Emmerich is basically backed into a corner, and he's the first one after they convince after Dietrich beats a confession out of Cobby. He basically spills the beans on everyone, because Cobby was basically the middleman between everyone. He introduced everyone to everyone, so he knew the whole plan. They get Emmerich, and Emmerich, when he's caught, can't face it, so he writes a don't think we can use the word on YouTube anymore, which is bizarre that you can't use the word regardless of context. But he writes a final letter to his wife, which he then tears up, which was a change that they wanted made for the Hays Code. Initially, he wrote the letter and then shot himself in the head. You can say that, but you can't use the word. It's weird. Whereas with the Hays Code, they made him tear up the letter and throw it into a drawer, which she's still just going to find and piece together anyway. But he meets his end, and then we get a shot of Gus being brought in, and Gus knows that it was Cobby who snitched, and he tries to kill him in the prison, but they throw him into a cell. And then, again, just very, very dark, very bleak, very sad. The cops are trying to bust Louis' door down, and they kick his door into his funeral, or his wake, I should say, his wake in his sitting room. He's already in a casket. His whole family are all there in black. The baby's there. The wife is silent. And Louis did not survive the night. Which leaves us with Dix and Doc on the run. And they kind of just come to a gentleman's agreement. Fuck the plan. We'll just take what we have. We'll do what we can. Dix is like, well, listen, hopefully I see you around again. Hopefully we can do something like this again. He kind of alludes to he's going to go to Kentucky, to where that farm is. And Doc is going to go to Cleveland. And Doll can see that Dix has been shot, and she basically refuses to let him leave by himself. He looked out for her, so she's going to look out for him. She's like, I'll be your driver. He kind of refuses, but she still comes anyway, so she's in the passenger seat, and they head off in their merry way, whilst Doc manages to find a German taxi driver by pure fluke. So he befriends him and he pays him a lump sum to take him to Cleveland, which is very interesting because this is where, after the majority of the film, we get the first of two pieces of music, which I just thought was really interesting. There's no music in the entire film. First, we get a diegetic piece of music. Diegetic's when they can hear it in the cinema, in the film, isn't it? Yeah. They get a diegetic piece of film or music, which is Doc convinces them to stop in at a diner. He kind of just wants to take in this moment. He wants a cigar. He wants to kind of take his time, leisurely make his way to Cleveland, enjoy it. And he admires as these young people are dancing around a jukebox. So he gives them a load of quarters or a load of dimes. And he basically just says, play all the songs you want to play. And he just kind of watches them dancing. And he has a great time. But in a great shot, we see her dancing in front of the jukebox. And then the camera pushes over her shoulder towards the window, where we can see two cops watching in. And Doc does in fact get caught by the cops. So yeah, it's just really interesting to me that the movie has absolutely no music at all up until that point, and then we get that. And then the other piece of music that we get is at the very, very end, when Dix he passes out with the wheel, and Doll takes the wheel. Then she gets him to a doctor. As soon as Dix comes to, he legs it out of the doctor, and the doctor says, "Oh, this guy doesn't have enough blood in him to keep a chicken alive, let alone a human." Basically, he's a ticking time bomb. He somehow manages to make it to Kentucky, where he gets to the stable where he thinks he can see his horses, and he runs down and he collapses. And then all of a sudden we get the second piece of music, which is the final thing in the film. A big swell of music from nowhere, big non-diegetic sound for once. Big swell of music, he's dead, and all the horses come over to check on him. And then the end just comes up, and it's like, wow, what a bleak ending. But as you said, Hays Code, can't let the bad guys win. In inverted commas, bad guys.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. 100%. Absolutely love it. There is that speech just before Dix obviously kind of passes away, where the commissioner is in front of a whole lot of reporters. And then he gives that whole speech, like I said, about what the plan was, etc., and there's only a few bad apples, not all cops like that. But then when he's describing Dix, he goes out of his way to say, right, we've gotten 6 out of 7. There's one more on the loose, and he's the most hardened criminal of them all. He's the most dangerous, he's the most violent. Which is interesting because, like, on the surface, he's kind of right. But then we also know, because we watched the whole film, Dix is almost, like, yeah, he's brusque and he's a bit, he's not the most charming personality, but like he's not by any means a bad person. He's not by any means an evil person. That's what the film essentially has been about, which is that, like, his circumstances have led him to obviously take part in this heist, which isn't, legal. but yeah, like, we can understand why he's done it, and because of the farm and because of obviously it's the whole nature versus nurture thing. Because he's grown up in such an environment, his path has almost been laid out for him in a way. So I guess in a way the film is him going back to his childhood, going back to his roots, and going back to the person he could have been if his family hadn't lost the farm in the first place. So that's almost what's so bittersweet about it, and yeah, it's really memorable ending.
Yeah, fantastic film. John Huston directs the shit out of this. It is so great. I know we use the words over and over again, but it is so bleak, so dark, but it's so, like, rich with just filmmaking brilliance. It looks gorgeous. The characters are great. The characters are memorable, which is, again, a funny thing considering next week's episode. The performances are all good, genuinely across the board. Everyone's good. Sterling Hayden, while he wasn't, like, let's say an A-list leading man at the time, like your Cary Grants, your Jimmy Stewarts, your John Waynes, etc., it's safe to say that the guy is like a powerhouse. Like, he, as in physically, but like also just, I don't know, similar to like Lee Van Cleef. He's just got like a voice of a movie star. It's definitely also what kind of lent into what made Jack D. Ripper such a memorable character, is his voice. But he's just so good at projecting his voice, and I thought his performance was fantastic. Definitely one of the best heist films we will cover on the podcast, I reckon. I thoroughly enjoyed the Asphalt Jungle. I gave it 4.5 stars. John Huston is a absolute belter of a director. He has so many good films. Like, genuinely, you go through his filmography and it's crazy how stacked it is. Obviously, we did The Maltese Falcon before, which, as Shane mentioned already, is probably one of our best ever episodes. It's a lot of fun. But just, like, shout out to John Huston, because first and foremost, I will never forget that this guy directed Escape to Victory, which is so funny to me.
So
like
funny.
most people, Escape to Victory is like a non-film, but like for football fans, Escape to Victory is such a famous film because it's like one of the few football films that
Yeah.
exist.
What a few decent
Pele,
ones,
Michael
yeah.
Caine, Sylvester Stallone against the Nazis in a game of football. That's directed by John Huston. Also, we've referenced it a bunch of times, especially last year in Noirvember. But one of Humphrey Bogart's best ever performances is The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
So
Another unbelievable film directed by John Huston. Key Largo, Annie, Fat City, The African Queen, The Misfits, The Man Who Would Be King, Moby Dick. The guy has a stacked filmography. But it's always a pleasure to cover John Huston on the podcast. And yeah, Marilyn Monroe's podcast debut, I think we definitely need to make more of an effort to cover more Marilyn Monroe films, because obviously total icon of cinema of this era. But again, she's one of those ones, like with All About Eve as well. She was only in, I think, 29 feature films. So even the ones like this where you see her on the poster, it's funny to see that she's barely in them, but she was just so iconic that, like, how could she not be, no offense to Sterling Hayden, but like, how could the cover, or the poster I should say, of this film not be Marilyn Monroe? Visually, like, undeniably the most striking character in this film, and it's just because it's Marilyn Monroe, but like, such an iconic look, such an iconic actress, but this isn't necessarily an iconic performance from her.
No.
She has much better and more fleshed out and memorable characters than this one, but still great to cover on the podcast. Shane, what do you reckon? Is the Asphalt Jungle any use?
yeah, it's really good. If you're into heist movies and or noir movies, this is for you. You should absolutely give this a go. Just like you said, I'm going to say the word again, but it's just bleak and it's uncompromising, and it's just really, it's not overly violent, but there's always a sense of violence just lurking just off our frame, just off camera. Like, anything could happen at any moment. It's just a dirty city, a dirty town, both literally and figuratively. Like, there's the
It's a dirty old town.
the cops the cops are dirty, the criminals aren't any better, obviously. So it's just, there's just a sense throughout of like anything could happen to anyone at any moment. Yeah, John Huston is absolutely iconic. I've seen probably about 7 or 8 of his films at this stage, and I don't think I've seen a bad one yet. I think, and this is right up there towards one of my favorites for sure. I can't wait till we cover any more of his films, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, no, we will definitely be covering more John Huston on the podcast. John Huston collabing with Humphrey Bogart is always a treat.
Yeah.
As well as Marilyn Monroe. Obviously, The Misfits is a very iconic film, which I haven't seen yet, but I have a funny feeling that by the time this episode comes out, I will have seen The Misfits. Make of that what you will. But in the meantime, I haven't watched an awful lot of things, Shane. Have you, since we last recorded? It's been a week. And to be honest,
yeah, not much.
I've watched one movie, which I am more than happy to talk about. But what about you, Shane? What have you watched?
Yeah, I've seen 3 movies that are non-podcast episodes. Yeah, so
So I this week finished the original series of Twin Peaks. I finished season 2. Season 1 is definitely perfect, amazing. Season 2, I think, is fantastic. I don't necessarily know that those sort of middling episodes that everyone refers to, I don't know how I kind of feel about them, because you enjoy them as you're watching them, but you kind of get to a point where you do think like, wow, the magic. I wouldn't go as far as to say that the magic wears off, but you do kind of feel like, wow, when you think about where Twin Peaks was like 7 episodes ago, we're in a very different place. But then he does get mentioned a lot in season 2, but when this new villain, Wyndham Earl, starts getting referenced, and then we get the performance as well. Wyndham Earl is a fantastic villain who basically rounds out season 2, and yeah, that final episode is unbelievable, undeniably one of the best episodes of the entire series. Is the final episode of season 2, episode 22. It's amazing. And then the one movie I watched was Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Oh my god. I actually just got goosebumps after I said it. We talked about it a lot during Bond month about worthy sequels. What makes a worthy sequel? Worthy prequels is a really fascinating thing, especially if you're like a Star Wars fan. But worthy prequels is a really interesting discussion as well. And I genuinely don't think, and a lot of this, I don't want to call it luck, but a lot of this is because of how amazing this movie is. But I don't think there can be a more worthy prequel to exist. It is hilarious that Cheryl Lee, who was originally signed on to just play Laura Palmer in a body bag in that first scene, in that first episode, and then, you know, the rest of Twin Peaks is basically about Laura Palmer. And then Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is about the last week of her life. And Cheryl Lee puts in one of the most insane, incredible performances I've ever seen in my life. It is hilarious. Like, it is a bit of a joke amongst like Twin Peaks fans or whatever that, like, how do you scout someone to play a body who ends up being such an insanely talented actor? Like, it is just amazing. Because, yeah, oh my god, this is a gut-wrenching film. It is one of the saddest, most traumatic movies I've ever seen in my life. Laura Palmer is one of the most empathetic characters in the history of cinema. I genuinely don't know if I've ever felt worse for a character. And a lot of it, because obviously a lot of what happens to her is explained in detail, shall we say, in Twin Peaks. To see it happen is awful, but also everything that isn't said in the series that we didn't know about. Because Twin Peaks, for what it is such a fun, quaint little town with so many fun, entertaining people who live there. Like, there's a lot of normal people who live there, but like there's also a lot of fun characters, and it's got such a nice vibe to it. Obviously, it's got that seedy undertone, which is what David Lynch is going for, sort of the seedy undertone to suburbia. But yeah, there's very little fun to be had with Fire Walk with Me. Also, just I actually saw a Christopher Nolan interview where someone said that my life is like a Christopher Nolan film. I don't understand any of it. And they asked Christopher Nolan, how do you feel about this quote? And he said, don't try to understand it, just try to feel it.
Yeah.
Which is a great line. But there's certain parts in this film that genuinely feel like that as well. Whatever about the Black Lodge and stuff, like the Black Lodge as a concept is just unbelievable. It's so cool. It's so fascinating because so little is explained, yet so much happens. Your imagination can't help but try and piece things together, and as a result, everyone kind of has their own interpretations of the Black Lodge. But like just things like David Bowie being in this film, and like the entire sort of prologue, so to speak, about the first murder that actually kicked it all off, which wasn't Laura Palmer, which was 1 year prior to Laura Palmer, and the investigation behind that, which doesn't necessarily get talked about a lot in the series. It's just so interesting to flesh all that out, because what it's left with genuinely changes the whole series for the better. It makes it so much more impactful, and I'm not going to name names, but it also makes it so much harder to watch who we find out be the murderer, to retroactively then watch the series again, knowing that this person did this, is so difficult to watch. But as I said, because Twin Peaks is so it's so energetic, shall we say, I don't know, it totally warrants a rewatch of the entire series. Like, after I watched the 25 years later, I'm gonna have to go back and watch the original series again now that I have the context of Fire Walk With Me. But I have to say, I couldn't recommend Twin Peaks enough. It's so worth the hype. It's so amazing. My absolute favorite TV series I've ever watched.
Wow.
And Fire Walk With Me is the greatest prequel I've ever seen. Shane, what about you?
No, you've sold me. I want to start Twin Peaks first. Well, the thing with David Lynch's work is I've only ever seen Mulholland Drive, which I adored. But it's like I almost don't want to go too far in because I'll just out myself as an idiot because I just won't understand like 90% of it.
I will say Twin Peaks is a lot more accessible than I thought it would be.
Okay, yeah.
I found it a lot more accessible than I thought it would be. Then you get to the Black Lodge and the White Lodge and that stuff, and then it really then it just goes to places. But no, 90%, 95% of Twin Peaks, I would say, is a very accessible, interesting crime drama with, like, whatever about Laura Palmer being an amazing character, but like Kyle MacLachlan as Special Agent Dale Cooper is just so great. He's such a class FBI agent to just watch. He's so fascinating.
It does raise just probably going to what I've watched. I know obviously it's a prequel for Walk With Me, so I don't know if you've seen Breaking Bad, have you?
I actually haven't. No.
Yeah, so
I've watched such few TV shows.
Better Call Saul is a ridiculously great prequel series to Better Call Saul. Like, it fleshes out the entire backstory of Saul Goodman, formerly known as Jimmy McGill, and then Mike Ehrmantraut as well. The funny thing about Mike Ehrmantraut is you were talking about Laura Palmer, this actress, what's her name? Cheryl Lee. About obviously how she was only cast as a body bag first. Mike Ehrmantraut was a character that was only created because Bob Odenkirk, who was cast as Saul Goodman, had prior it's actually How I Met Your Mother, which is a very funny thing to think of. He was on How I Met Your Mother and it was a prior commitment that he couldn't get out of. So he had to create this character, Mike Ehrmantraut, just to make up for his absence in the story. And he went on to be one of the greatest characters in Breaking Bad. And then he went on to do 6 seasons of Better Call Saul, which is like, certainly the best prequel series or film or anything like that I've ever seen. So yeah, like I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what you're talking about with obviously Twin Peaks. Eventually I'll get around to it for sure, but yeah, I can't wait until I do. So yeah, in terms of films, Materialists obviously is directed by Celine Song, who wrote and directed Past Lives, which I absolutely loved. It's one of my favourite films of 2023. This is, in my opinion, decidedly less good, less impactful, don't think it really works nearly as well as Past Lives does. Definitely more of a romantic drama than a romantic comedy, which you wouldn't really get from the marketing. The marketing would make it seem like it's definitely more of a romantic comedy, but it definitely isn't. Some heavy stuff happens in this film, which obviously won't spoil, but I did enjoy isn't the right word, but I did admire how it's willing to go to some places and really deal with kind of the ethical and moral implications of what Dakota Johnson's character does. To me, I just don't... The casting just didn't work for me. So Chris Evans is playing this down on his luck schlub who... I just can't buy that. I'm sorry. Like, it's Chris Evans. Like, come on. And Pedro Pascal, he's actually good in the film. He's good in most things, obviously, but he's good in the film. He's playing this hedge fund kind of business aficionado, whatever. This really rich guy, and he pulled it off well. But I almost think just swap the two roles. I could much rather see. I could much more easily see Pedro Pascal as this kind of low down on his luck aspiring actor. Who's because not that long ago he actually was in that position. He's spoken about it a lot. Whereas Chris Evans, and then just cast Chris Evans as the hedge fund manager. I almost think it's such an easy solution. You've cast the right people just in the wrong roles, I would have liked to have actually seen that kind of version, but yeah, the script itself just didn't really fully work for me, which is a shame. But I still want to see what she does next because Past Lives is just so good. The Talk of the Town is a Cary Grant film. He also starring Jean Arthur, which the only other film they had done was about a year or two prior. Only Angels Have Wings, which is one of my favourite films of the 1930s. Absolute classic. This is really good too. Definitely not on that level, but it's still really good. As he's playing a guy who's been wrongfully accused of murder. It's not a Hitchcock film, don't worry. But a guy who's been wrongfully accused of murder, but definitely much more of a comical kind of way that he has to try and get out of the situation. And then one final Cary Grant film, co-starring Katharine Hepburn, who obviously did 4 films with, including Bringing Up Baby and The Philadelphia Story. This is in between those 2 films, Holiday. It's directed by George Cukor. Yeah, definitely kind of a critique of high society, and definitely more hard-hitting, and definitely has a lot more to say about that kind of thing than you would think. Again, Cary Grant plays a guy who is kind of from the middle class, or maybe working class as it would be known as now, who marries this kind of high society woman. He doesn't marry her. Wants to marry her. He's in a relationship with her. Struggles to get her father's consent, or her father's kind of blessings. So the film is kind of about that. But then Katharine Hepburn, what a powerhouse of an actress. She earned she didn't actually win an Oscar for this, but she earned a reputation if this film is anything about. Like, I've definitely seen her in a few films, and I've definitely always enjoyed her. This might be my favourite performance of hers in a way, just because I think she's being asked to do a very different kind of performance than I have seen of hers before. But she pulls it off with aplomb, so it's really good. So yeah, those 2 Cary Grant films I definitely enjoyed quite a lot. And yeah, didn't really see anything else other than that.
Nice. So yeah, next week we are covering Ocean's 11 from 1960, starring various Rat Pack members: Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., etc., etc. Also, Cesar Romero is making his podcast debut, I believe, which is a lot of fun. Because if you don't know, Cesar Romero was Joker from the 60s Batman series with Adam West. Also, other side note, had they made a serious Batman in the 50s, Sterling Hayden would have made a great Batman.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he has the look.
He would have been a savage Batman.
Yeah, good show.
Just a side note. Anyway, next week we cover Ocean's 11. I'm sure it's class. See you all then. We've already both seen it. See you then for Ocean's 11. Definitely the best Ocean's 11 film. For sure. That came out in 1960. See you then. Goodbye.